it's time for me to get petty and talk about some books that I really didn't like this year. I'm so excited for this video. So I'm going to talk about my 3 least favorite books that I read this year. The first one is going to be about a book that I DNF'd, that I quit reading a quarter of the way through, so I can't even speak it for the book as a whole. All I can say is my very boring experience with the first quarter of it. That'll be quick. Then we'll move on to a book that I read almost entirely, skipped out on the end because I hated it on a very personal level, and we'll go into all of that. And then finally we will end on a book that I read all the way through to the very end and that I believe desperately deserves to be dragged, and I'm so excited to be the one to do it. It could have been great and it actively chose not to be. First book, the quick book that we'll get through very quickly, is called Never Have I Ever. This is a domestic thriller. I typically don't do well with domestic thrillers anymore because I find them very similar to one another and also very boring, and this book was, oh my goodness, painfully boring, at least for the first quarter. Maybe the climax was amazing. This book is about a group of middle-aged ladies who have a book club where they don't really talk about the book very much. Some of them don't read the book. They basically just get together to take a break from like mom life, family life, drink, hang out. But then one day, a new neighbor decides to crash the party and take over to create a drinking game called Never Have I Ever, where everybody has to, or did she call it that? I don't care. Everybody has to say the worst thing that they've done that day, and whoever did the worst thing, everybody else has to drink, and then you escalate it to week, month, year, lifetime. It escalates and it escalates, and people are getting drunk and confessing to like affairs and lies and domestic things. But our main character, she has a deep, dark secret in her past, and so the book is going back and forth between this book club thing that's happening and her past, which is like 90% her hating her body and having issues with her weight, and like 10% I did something bad once. So like even in the timeline where we're supposed to be getting big reveals for like something terrible that she did, which I did get to the reveal for the flashback. I'm sure there was more reveals to come in the book. Even though I got to that, I will still definitively say that backstory was not interesting, and the present day was even less interesting. So anyway, whatever. So the new lady that came in to crash the party to create this game is clearly targeting our protagonist because she knows her secret, but our protagonist, she's not gonna play this game. No sirree, Bob. She's gonna fight back. I don't know. It didn't necessarily do anything wrong other than just being painfully boring. I was bored. Next book, we have The Fledgling. I saw this one almost all the way through, and then my friend reminded me, you can stop. And then I thought, oh, I'm gonna stop. So I'll preface this by saying I don't like vampire books 98% of the time. It's just not my thing. Vampire books, oftentimes, I've tried a good handful, and oftentimes they tend to be very sexual, and that sexualization is oftentimes paired with violence and lack of consent. And that's just like the nature of vampires, and like, you know, whatever. But like, I don't like reading it. I don't enjoy it. I don't judge anyone. I don't like it. But my thought process was, if someone can make me enjoy a vampire book, it'll be Octavia E. Butler. I trust her. And I feel like she heard me say that and then like laughed and wrote this book. I love Octavia E. Butler. I will continue to read from her, but this one was not, I didn't like it. And it's mostly because our protagonist, which by the way, every one of these books was a library book or a script book, so like good for me for not wasting my money, but it also means I'm not gonna remember this vampire's name. So our protagonist is a vampire who wakes up feasting on a person and doesn't remember anything. She doesn't remember her name. She doesn't remember where she's from. She doesn't remember how she got in this state. She just knows that she's hungry. So then she meets a man. By the way, this vampire that we woke up with, she is in a 10-year-old body. I think that's important to note. So then she meets this man. He falls in love with her, and they have a very in-depth relationship, this 10-year-old body and adult man. Now, she does say in the book to him early on, I'm pretty sure I'm not 10. I don't really know how old I am or who I am or what my name is or anything about myself, but I feel really confident I'm not actually 10. However, every time they have an, we'll say, encounter, he does really hone in on how young her body is. Like stroking her chest and talking about her lack of breasts. Like very, really focused in on she's in a 10-year-old body. And I'm not gonna spoil the plot for you, but I will move forward talking about why I had such a visceral reaction to this book, giving character details that are obviously not given to us at the beginning because she has memory loss. So we'll call it mild spoilers, and there will be a timestamp to skip this if you don't want those mild spoilers. But getting into those mild spoilers, I would just like to say that my main grievance, the plot was like mildly interesting. I probably don't need to say what the plot is because of the memory loss. We really don't get into the plot for quite a bit, but the plot was mildly interesting. Getting to know more about the vampire culture and ways within this storyline was mildly interesting. But speaking of characters, and specifically our main character, Octavia E. Butler could have made this whole situation a little bit more palatable. And she chose very deliberately not to. Like with the fixation on her being in a 10-year-old body and keep reminding us and hearkening back to it in intimate scenes I didn't love. But then there were also like really intentional things that were said. Like when at one point the guy tells the vampire 10-year-old that he's not entirely sure how much consent he really had in this relationship because, you know, there's this thing that makes people drawn to vampires when the vampire wants them, right? And then they don't really have as much free will. And she specifically responds with, no, before we attached, before we, I don't remember the word, became some sort of companions in this vampire way, you had time to make a choice if you were interested in this sort of relationship or not. And then he even said, it's true, I was attracted to you before I was drawn in this magical sort of way and before I knew what you were. So that's like strike 2 probably at this point. But then we're not done. Once we learn more about the vampire ways and about her history and all that kind of stuff, they do disclose her age, which is 50, which, you know, I think every reader just breathes a sigh of relief at that. But then they immediately follow it up by saying, which is still adolescent in vampire years, and you are still, by our standards, not sexually mature. And we would not encourage you to be in the type of relationship that you're currently in because you're a child by our culture. Why'd you add it? Why'd you say it? Why'd you want to? And it made me feel so icky, and I really hated reading it. And there were also like weird things going on with the way it was written, like the fact that the scenes of the two alone were oftentimes fade to black. But the most detailed scene we got was when he was mad at her and was trying to hurt her and be violent towards her instead of a fade to black. I hope you're picking up what I'm trying to say. I'm really trying not to activate bots. I don't know, I just feel like it could have been more palatable and it just wasn't, and it was like almost trying not to be, and maybe that was the point. And honestly, maybe the point of it, of all of this, of why she chose to make our protagonist, why Butler chose to make our protagonist a 10-year-old, or in a 10-year-old body but still adolescent, whatever. Maybe the reason behind all that just went way over my head, and this is a me problem, but I can tell you that I did not enjoy reading that book. And the final book on my worst books of the year list is Small Game. This book, I saw through to the end, and oh no. So Small Game is about a reality TV show, it's a new reality TV show, this will be their first season, where they take a group of people, put them on a deserted island, and they're stranded and they don't have any resources, and they try to watch them survive. The reason they give is because they want to see how humans would interact and how they would develop their own sort of system if they were removed from culture and rules, and they get to make their own rules and like whatever. So that was the reason they gave, but the reality is that this is a reality TV show, which means that that's not the goal at all. The goal is just to make entertainment, which means that the directors and the cameramen would pretend to try to help, but all they're trying to do is create good television. So our protagonist, Mara, I actually remember her name because I just finished reading this book last month, I think. Mara actually has some survival skills, and in fact, she has a business where people pay her to be stranded, sort of, on her property, on her acreage, and they try to survive for the night, and it just like gives them a sense of accomplishment, but they're also under surveillance, so they know that they're protected in case they do come across an issue, and it's like this one night of survival kind of situation. So she actually has some survival skills, she has some knowledge on this, and she's an asset to her team. So she goes into this reality TV show, and it's they don't run it well. They allow these people to get in some very precarious situations. So the beginning of the book was pretty interesting to me. I really enjoy a survival story quite a lot, and that's why I picked up this book, is because I really like survival stories. And so going through their day-to-day of trying to survive and trying to not become malnourished and trying to work together and figure out how their skills can complement each other so that they don't die was all really interesting to me. And then add to it the reality TV show stuff and showing how like skeevy the directors and the cameramen and like all the stuff that people in reality TV shows do to incite drama, or at least in some reality TV shows. At least in some reality TV shows, you know, just honing in on that too. Both of these things were very interesting to me. And the way I described this book in my wrap-up video last month was that this book was going at a good pace, it was doing good things, and then it just tripped over its own feet and tumbled down the hill. And that is, I think that that's the perfect description of what happened with this book. All of a sudden, keeping it spoiler-free, all of a sudden, the book took a twist, took a turn that was very interesting, and ended up being just terrible. It was a really good idea, but the execution of it was painful. And then it just like, oh, terribly disappointing. So what I'm gonna do is I am gonna go into spoilers. That's my spoiler-free description of this book. But I am gonna go into spoilers because I need to talk about it. So timestamp to just jump to the end of the video if you don't wanna hear the spoilers at this point, but here they are. These are the spoilers. So the twist that happened in this book is the cameramen suddenly disappeared, as well as the directors. They abandoned their camp, they're gone. They left behind a couple of cameras. So at first, Mara and her team think, oh, okay, maybe this is just part of the experiment, part of what we're doing, so we'll just continue on. But then the cameras, they never return for them, they never see the crew again. Eventually the camera batteries die, and it seems like they've been abandoned. So we don't have an explanation. Our characters don't know what happened, and they decide that now no one's coming back for them. It's over, and they don't know why. So they just need to try to find a way off this island. So now they have this added thing of why were we abandoned? And now not just survive until the end of filming, but figure out a way to get back home, which definitely raises the stakes. It adds a mystery in there. It's a really good idea. But what ended up happening, and again, I'll remind you that we're in the spoiler section of this video, of this book. What ended up happening is Ashley, who is the girlfriend, or at least like they've started, Mara and Ashley have started a relationship. I don't know if I should call her girlfriend at this point because it is a little bit rocky and it is very new, but whatever. Mara and Ashley have started a relationship, and Ashley, it turns out, was sleeping with the director of the show in order to get a leg up because she wants to be famous, and so she wants to have a favorable edit and all that kind of stuff. And so through that relationship, she is aware that the show lost its funding. They ran out of money, and so they just abandoned everything. They just left. They couldn't finish filming the season, so they bailed. But the way Ashley presents it to us is in one sentence, just one, where she says, they ran out of funding, I think they bailed. I'm pretty sure that was essentially what the sentence was. So she's not even positive that this is what happened. She says one sentence about it, we don't continue to discuss it, and we never come back around to that conversation. So we, the readers, are left to just assume maybe Ashley is right in her deduction. And then they do leave the campground where they've been staying, and they try to find a way out, and they find a cabin that has some supplies so they're able to eat, and woohoo, they survive because of this random cabin on this abandoned on this isolated island. And then Mara goes back to their campground to release some fish as a favor to Ashley. So she goes back to their campground, and when she does, she finds that people, after they left, people returned to their campground, probably in search for them, and that they just missed their potential rescue. So we, the readers, once again, don't ever get an explanation for this. So we're just left to assume that probably what happened, because it's never explained, we're just left to assume that everybody that participated in the making of this show, everyone, not just the directors, the cameramen, the people that were assisting, the assistants, like everybody was just terribly incompetent and got on that plane to leave this island and thought to themselves, probably the cast will follow later, or maybe we just didn't think about them at all. They got home, got settled, got sorted, and then realized, none of the cast returned. None of the survivors returned. I guess, are they still on the island? And then they took a flight, someone took a flight and returned to try to find them, but they were slightly too late. So they left again. And like the end. And that's what we get. We never get an explanation. We never get a hard and fast explanation of what happened, except for Ashley giving a throwaway sentence, and then somebody returned for them. So like, I guess we'll just assume that everybody just was completely incompetent and sucked. Ashley did say, I think she said that it was possible that like the cameraman thought that the director was going to handle getting the cast out, and the director was a jerk, so like he just abandoned them. But like there was no search party other than like someone returning and checking out the camp, and they were gone. There was no additional search party. Like, I don't know. It just doesn't, you didn't explain it, and it doesn't make sense. So like, this really, really interesting twist that happened was so unfulfilling in the way it was executed. But then on top of that, this whole last little chunk of the book was like, okay, we found a cabin in the woods, we got some nourishment, woohoo, and then we found a lady, and then she assisted us and helped us get out, and then the book ended on, I kid you not, a paragraph summary. It ended on, okay, we're all gonna leave the island now. So Ashley and Mara go off to have a really great relationship, and they're happy, and then this guy does this, and all the survivors live on and are happy. And like that one paragraph of the end. We don't even get to see the falling out. I think there was a sentence in the paragraph that said that Mara confronted the director. Cool, I guess. We don't get to see that. We don't ever actually get hard explanations for what happened or consequences for how it happened. We don't get to see them trying to readjust to life. Like, just, it really read like the author said, you know what? This isn't working. Let's not waste everybody's time anymore. Let's just quit. And I mean, at least my time wasn't wasted anymore. And I did get to have a nice little rant. I don't know. It was genuine. Like there was hope, you know? But it was short. It was on a topic that I was interested in. And it was a fun kind of rant because it was so ridiculous how it was executed. So I'm not even mad about it. I like ranting about books like this, so was my time lost? Not really. So there you go. Those are my top 3 least favorite books that I read this year. I will have a video coming soon where where I will be reacting to 5-star reviews for some of these books, for all of these books, there's only 3 of them, as well as a video coming for my favorite books of the year. In the meantime, please do let me know what your least favorite books of the year were. I would love to hear your rants. And if you want to keep up with what I read week to week, on my second channel, I have weekly reading vlogs where I give spoiler-free reviews for everything that I'm reading throughout the week, as well as reviews and in-depth discussions for some of my favorite books that I read. I post videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on this channel, Tuesday and Thursday on the second channel. I'll see you again soon. Bye.